Welcome to my channel. World Scene News. Subscribe to my channel for news updates all around the world. In 2025, the world's two largest economies, the United States and China, found themselves locked in a trade war fought not with weapons, but with punishing port fees that sent shockwaves through the global shipping industry. These multi-million-dollar charges, sometimes reaching an astonishing $1.6 million per ship, threatened to choke global commerce and drive up prices for everyday goods, from electronics to groceries. Ship owners, logistics companies, and manufacturers were caught in the crossfire, forced to gamble with every voyage between the US and China, uncertain if their cargo would even be profitable. The costs rippled down the supply chain, making life more expensive for consumers worldwide, as price tags climbed higher and shelves grew less predictable. Then, in November, a breakthrough. After weeks of tense, high-level talks, both nations agreed to suspend the fees for 1 year, offering a rare moment of hope. The shipping industry breathed a collective sigh of relief, grateful for the pause, but everyone knew the truce was only temporary. The core issues, competition, security, and economic dominance, remain unresolved, and the threat of renewed fees looms over the industry like a gathering storm. This fragile ceasefire, set to expire in November 2026, offers only a brief respite, a pause in a much larger conflict. The world now waits anxiously to see if this pause will lead to lasting peace, or if the trade war will reignite with even greater intensity. The truce has bought time, but not a solution. Every day, uncertainty lingers over ports and boardrooms alike. The future of global trade hangs in the balance, with markets and livelihoods depending on what comes next. What happens next will shape the economic landscape for years to come, affecting nations, businesses, and families around the world. The port fee conflict was born from years of simmering US-China trade tensions, a rivalry that had been building beneath the surface for decades as both nations vied for dominance in global commerce. In early 2025, the US launched a Section 301 investigation into China's maritime practices, citing unfair subsidies and opaque regulations. This investigation led to the imposition of steep USTR service fees on ships with Chinese ties, a move that sent shockwaves through the shipping industry. China quickly retaliated with its own special port charges on vessels linked to the US, mirroring the American policy and signaling that it would not back down easily. This tit-for-tat escalation turned ports into battlegrounds, with ships becoming pawns in a high-stakes economic chess game that played out on the world's oceans. The fees, calculated by vessel size, cargo type, and other factors, could reach $1.6 million per port call, enough to erase profits for entire voyages and force companies to reconsider their shipping routes. Ship owners suddenly faced the risk of massive penalties on the world's busiest trade lane, with little warning and few options to avoid the fallout. The result, routine logistics became a gamble, and the global shipping industry was thrown into turmoil as uncertainty rippled through every link in the supply chain. Each new move by Washington was met with a swift counter from Beijing, deepening the standoff and making compromise seem increasingly out of reach. The 10 months before the truce were marked by anxiety, disruption, and a breakdown of trust between the two superpowers, as negotiations stalled and tempers flared. The conflict showed how quickly targeted trade tools can destabilize the delicate machinery of global logistics, threatening the flow of goods that modern economies depend on. Ports, once gateways of commerce, became front lines in a broader economic war, with security tightening and uncertainty growing by the day. The world watched as the US and China weaponized trade, with the shipping industry caught in the middle and global markets bracing for impact. The stage was set for a costly and unpredictable standoff, as both sides dug in and the stakes continued to rise. The November truce would only temporarily halt the escalation, leaving the world to wonder what the next chapter in this economic rivalry would bring. The port fee war hit ship owners and operators hardest, threatening their very survival on US-China routes. $1 million fee per port call forced companies to choose: absorb the loss, pass it to customers, or avoid the route entirely. This uncertainty paralyzed investment and planning, tying up capital that could have fueled innovation or improved working conditions. The fees acted as a massive tax on global trade, punishing those who move trillions in goods each year. The impact rippled outward. Higher shipping costs meant higher prices for manufacturers, retailers, and ultimately, consumers. Everyday items, from electronics to clothing, became more expensive as companies struggled to manage soaring logistics costs. The dispute was a real-world lesson in how decisions in Washington and Beijing can hit wallets worldwide. The global supply chain, already fragile, was pushed to the brink. The port fee war made clear, when shipping falters, everyone pays the price. The world's economic engine was suddenly running on uncertainty. Beyond the numbers, the port fee conflict created chaos for businesses and workers alike. Unpredictable rules made it nearly impossible for companies to plan or quote prices, forcing many to abandon US-China routes. Shipping capacity shrank, driving up freight rates and disrupting supply chains. Manufacturers and retailers faced unreliable deliveries and rising costs, sometimes turning to expensive alternatives like air freight. Workers, from port crews to truck drivers, saw their schedules thrown into disarray, with erratic workloads and unstable hours. The entire ecosystem supporting shipping, from fuel suppliers to maintenance crews, felt the shockwaves. Port authorities and customs officials, now enforcers of punitive measures, found themselves at odds with industry partners. The spirit of cooperation gave way to suspicion and conflict. The fee war eroded trust at every level of the global logistics network. As the crisis deepened and global tensions reached a breaking point, a breakthrough finally came at an October summit in South Korea, where the world's attention was fixed on the outcome. US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, after hours of intense negotiation, agreed to suspend the crippling port fees for 1 year, offering a much-needed pause in the escalating trade war. On November 10th, both governments announced the coordinated suspension, instantly easing tensions across the shipping world and sending a wave of cautious optimism through global markets. The truce created a window for further negotiation and a return to more predictable trade, allowing businesses to plan ahead and ports to resume normal operations. Official statements from both sides expressed cautious optimism and a willingness to keep talking, emphasizing the importance of dialogue in resolving complex disputes. China also suspended sanctions on US-linked subsidiaries of Hanwha Ocean, signaling a broader intent to de-escalate and restore trust between the two economic giants. The public, synchronized nature of the truce sent a clear message: at least, for now, economic warfare on the seas was over, and a fragile peace had been restored. The shipping industry and global markets responded with relief, as investors and companies welcomed the return of stability and the hope for lasting peace. Trade began to flow more freely, restoring some stability after months of chaos and uncertainty that had threatened supply chains worldwide. But the truce was framed as a first step, not a final solution, with leaders warning that much work remained to resolve deeper issues. The underlying disputes remained unresolved, and the risk of renewed conflict still lingered in the background. For now, the world's busiest trade route was given a temporary reprieve, but the future remained uncertain. The truce brought relief, but also a new kind of uncertainty. The agreement is temporary, set to expire in November 2026, with no guarantee of renewal. Businesses now operate in limbo, unsure if the fees will return or even increase. Hundreds of millions paid in fees remain unrefunded, adding financial strain. This uncertainty chills investment and long-term planning across the supply chain. Companies must weigh the risk of sudden cost spikes in future contracts. The truce offers short-term stability, but long-term doubts persist. The shadow of renewed conflict hangs over every decision. Ship owners aren't waiting for politicians, they're preparing for the worst. New contract clauses, like the BIMCO USTR clause, now spell out who pays if port fees return. Legal language is being rewritten to manage this unique political risk. Companies are stress-testing budgets, setting aside contingency funds, and modeling worst-case scenarios. Capital that could drive growth is now held in reserve just in case. The uncertainty is also accelerating supply chain diversification, with companies seeking alternative routes and sourcing locations. Over-reliance on a single trade corridor is seen as too risky. The industry is bracing for a future where geopolitical friction is the norm. Ship owners are determined not to be caught off guard again. The US-China port fee truce isn't just a shipping story, it's a global economic lifeline. Over 80% of world trade moves by sea. When shipping costs spike, Everyone feels it. The truce means stable prices for businesses and consumers, from American small businesses to Chinese factory workers. It provides breathing room for the global supply chain to function without disruptive trade measures. The episode is a stark reminder of our interconnected world. Trade wars between giants create global shockwaves. Commodity exporters, manufacturing hubs, and consumers everywhere benefit from this pause. The truce is good news for the world economy, offering stability in uncertain times. It gives diplomacy a chance to work and prevents a full-blown trade war. In a globalized world, cooperation isn't optional, it's essential for shared prosperity. The temporary peace on the seas is a win for everyone. As 2025 ends, the port fee truce stands as a fragile bridge over deep geopolitical divides. The next 11 months are critical. Negotiations will decide if peace holds or if conflict returns. Failure to reach a permanent deal could see fees snap back, plunging global trade into chaos. Renewed confrontation would trigger broader trade wars, harming growth and fueling instability worldwide. But a lasting agreement could restore confidence, unlock investment, and build more resilient supply chains. The outcome depends on political will in Washington and Beijing. The truce is a window of opportunity. Leaders must seize it. The world is watching, hoping for compromise over confrontation. The fate of this fragile bridge will shape global trade for years to come. The stakes could not be higher.